Hello, my friends. It is Friday, April 25th, 2025, and this is the Daily Brief. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context for you in the war in Ukraine. So the big story today is a Russian general in Moscow was just eliminated with an IED in a car. That the Ukrainians can reach into Moscow has to be terrifying for all Russian officials, but that's where we are. It's the highest ranking general off the map. All right, we'll get to that story in just a moment. Let's start here with 1,170 Russian casualties day over day, 9 tanks, 3 armored fighting vehicles, 72 artillery systems, 151 vehicles and fuel tanks. Okay, this 1,170 is not terribly high. When I look at Ragnar Gudmundsson's his index and everything that's going on his dashboard, engagements, casualties, equipment losses, all above the 7-day average. And I thought, all above the 7-day average? How is this possible? Like when I look at this and I look at, oh, okay, I got it. 1170 is below the 1233 average for the month, but we're including the ceasefire days where there was just under 1,000 on the first day and 670 on the second day. And so that's going to weight it a little bit weirdly. Okay, of the 72 missiles fired yesterday, 48 were intercepted, and so that's part of the puzzle with what happened yesterday. It could have been a lot worse. Airstrikes stayed high, but fewer MLRS strikes targeting artillery positions. Okay. Kyiv has declared April 25th, that's today, a day of mourning for the 12 people killed in this massive Russian attack yesterday. There were a lot more that were injured, but 12 were killed, mostly in Kyiv or all in Kyiv. I'm not sure. Trump, who has been reluctant to criticize Russia, condemned the attack, calling it not necessary and very bad timing. Could have said a lot more than that, but he didn't. Here's what Trump had to say. Trump on the Russian deadly attack. We're in the midst of talking and missiles were fired, and I'm not happy with it. Here he is.
In a Truth Social post, you used the words, Vladimir, stop. That seemed like a slightly different message, a personal message. What is your level of frustration with President Putin
I didn't like
at this
last
point?
night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. And I was not happy with it. That's what I meant, and that's, what it's.
That's stopping well short of calling it evil and barbaric and a war crime, which it is. I mean, you're targeting civilians. There was no military purpose.
I assume that's what you mean.
Sorry,
Yeah.
if the bombs keep falling, will you consider additional sanctions toward Russia, or what will you do if President Putin does not respond?
I'd rather answer that question in a week. I want to see if we can have a deal. No reason to answer it now, but I won't be happy. Let me put it that way. Things will happen.
Mr. President, why are you not putting more pressure on Russia? I know a lot of Europeans would like to see that.
You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
Can you maybe tell us what kind of pressure are you putting on Russia?
Yeah, and so the journalist is asking a good question. There's no discernible pressure being put on Russia. Maybe there is behind the scenes. I just don't see it. And so that's a good question for the journalist to ask.
Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now. The prime minister understands.
But he's not talking right now. I mean, he's not really coming to the table. So it does seem that Trump is not putting any real pressure on Russia.
Is that better than anybody? He wouldn't be talking right now. He's talking, and we're putting a lot of pressure. I think he wants to make a deal. We're going to find out very soon. But it takes two to tango, and you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal too. And they're being hit very hard. And I do believe they want to make a deal.
Okay, well, it seems like you're only putting pressure on Ukraine and not on Russia. And so that's why people are rightly questioning that. Okay, Ben Hodges says the missile strikes against Ukrainian civilians are a big FU to the administration's efforts. They only respect strength. I think that's fair. They only respect strength. The Kremlin has a zero respect for this administration. All right. Here, this was a fun fact. The length of Trump's yap on Zelensky was 4 times the length of his yap on Putin. Here's what he said about Zelensky. and they put a ruler next to it. And here's what he said about Putin. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get this deal done. This was not necessary. Very bad timing. Okay. Michael McFall, former ambassador to Russia, says this, posting on Truth Social: Vladimir, stop is not a strategy. It looks so weak. President Trump, increase sanctions, provide more weapons to Ukraine, seize Russia's central bank assets, and you'll get Putin's attention. Desperate sounding tweets will not. Again, I don't know because I'm not there. So maybe he is actually putting some tremendous pressure on Putin. Again, I don't see it. Okay. Putin didn't stop the attacks despite Trump's tweet, which, you thought that would have worked, right? Putin did not stop the attacks on Ukraine as Trump asked him to. Tonight, Russians attacked residential buildings in Pavlograd. This is not 2 days ago with a 70 some odd missiles. This was yesterday after Trump's telling Putin to stop by tweeting. The Dnipro region with 11 Shahed kamikaze drones. 3 civilians were killed, including 1 child. 6 more civilians hospitalized, including children. Maybe it's time to stop blindly trusting Vladimir, says the commentary here from Special Herzan Cat. Out of 103 launched, 41 shot down, 40 more didn't reach their targets. So that means roughly 20 Shahed drones got through in various places. And again, it was a residential building. That's a war crime. You're targeting civilians. And we're not talking about this. For some reason, I just can't understand. 3 people killed, a child among them, 10 more injured. Okay, let's turn our attention to what Ukraine's doing to Russia. So a Su-30 SM fighter was destroyed at Rostov-on-Don airfield, Ukraine's intelligence reported. And then we saw that a drone strike hit the home of a Chechen deputy leader in Crimea, according to ATESH. The attack occurred this morning in Saki, where the Kadyrov official was present. Then you see the big news, and this is the biggest hit as far as the military is concerned. Now, what I want to draw your attention to, though, is this is interesting. Ukraine is hitting a plane, a Chechen deputy leader that, again, the Chechens are fighting with the Ukrainians, and a major general. Okay, major general, he's higher than that. He's a lieutenant general. I'll show you that in a moment. Yaroslava Moskalik, deputy chief of the main operational directorate of the general staff of the Russian armed forces, was eliminated by a planted IED, that's improvised explosive device, in the Moscow region. In Moscow, like they're in the capital city blowing this guy up. Okay. An IED was placed in a vehicle and detonated as the Russian general was passing by. Okay. Important update: according to official records published on official legal information portal of Russian Federation, Russian General Yaroslavovich Moskalik, who was killed earlier today in the Moscow region, was in fact promoted to the rank of lieutenant general in 2021, a rank higher than previously reported, and I believe this is the highest ranking general. I could be wrong about that, but I think that is correct. Lieutenant general is higher than a major general. It's I believe that's a brigadier, major, lieutenant, so 3-star. Okay. Rare video of a Russian deputy chief of the main operations directorate of general staff. This is right where the explosion happened. And again, he's just walking by a Volkswagen in Moscow that was planted there, knowing where he would be going. And there he is. Okay. He was passing by that Volkswagen when the planted IED was triggered. The explosion happened immediately after that. His body was thrown several meters away, as Russian media now report. Preliminarily, the car filled with explosives could have been specially driven to the house where the soldier lived. The IED was filled with striking elements with a diameter of about 6 meters. I think that's what that is. The car did not belong to him, so that's how they took him out. I've already seen accounts of folks in Russian media, calling this barbaric assassination and breaking the rules of warfare. But he's a general. He's in uniform, and this is a legitimate target. Unlike average civilian just walking by that same vehicle would not have been a target. Just like the targets in Ukraine that are being hit with Shaheeds every night are not legitimate targets. Killing soldiers on the front line is a legitimate target, even though it's a war that shouldn't have started. I hate using that phrase because it sounds like Trump. It shouldn't. The war is not a good idea. It's illegitimate for Russia to be crossing the border. But at least AFU soldiers in uniform are the kinds of targets that are legitimate in warfare. He's in uniform. This is legitimate. Okay. Let's go to the battlefield. Ukrainian forces recently advanced near Gerdes. Now, part of this is that Ukraine had formed a new elite Azov-led army corps near the critical Gerdes sector. Gerdes direction among the most volatile zones. Let's look at the battlefield intensity map. This is where we just go around various spots and see where the assaults are highest. Okay, Kherson region along the Dnieper River, there were 3 attempts to advance by Russia. In the Kupiansk direction, 4 assaults. In the Novopavlivka direction, there were 8 enemy assaults. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, 8 times. Lyman direction, 14 attacks. Northwest of temporarily occupied Horlivka, Russian invaders made 14 attacks. Seversk direction, there were 7 attacks. In the Bakhmut front, 13 for a total of 20. In the Bakrovsk direction, 51 assaults, which was really high. 51 assaults, given that we only saw 1,170 casualties. So that was a very high number. And then finally, I want to show you this: results of an AFU strike on a Russian field base showing its complete destruction, including 7 vehicles, stockpiled ammunition, dugouts, everything from small arms, radio chargers, personal items. So the battlefield's still going on, even though we're distracted by missile strikes or a general being eliminated in Moscow and that sort of thing. Meanwhile, Maria Zakharova, it's always fascinating to me. So Zelensky was talking about how during the 30-hour Easter truce, there were 3,000 reported violations of Russia during Russia transgressing this during that 30-hour truce. Well, the Russians always seem to have to one-up you. And so here Maria Zakharova is coming out with, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, during the 30-hour Easter truce introduced by President Vladimir Putin, as many as 4,900 cases of ceasefire violations by Ukrainian forces were registered. Sure. Right. Okay. Anyway, some other odd stories. Son of a senior CIA official died fighting for Russian forces in Ukraine. A young American who called himself an anti-fascist and criticized the U.S. military-industrial complex died fighting for Russia in Ukraine. Again, this is the son of a CIA deputy director. Her name is Gillian Gloss, and this was carried as in the the obituary as a tragic death in Eastern Europe, but not that he's fighting for Russia. But that's weird that was what's going on. This guy apparently really didn't like the U.S. for some reason, so there's that. It's just a strange story. Here is John Bolton's assessment of why Trump is doing what he's doing. Ultimately, Trump wants to get Ukraine off his plate so he can move on to other agenda items. Let's listen to him talk with Caitlin Collins of CNN.
Well, hear what the president said about not having favorites here. Obviously, you served as his national security advisor. I just wonder what you make of that.
Well, of course he's got favorites, and his favorite is not Russia. His favorite is Vladimir Putin, whom he thinks is his friend. Trump has already made major concessions to the Russians. He has said weeks and months ago that he would not support Ukraine being restored to its full sovereignty and territorial integrity, which is a rejection of the U.S. position and the NATO position going back to February 24th, 2022, when the Russians invaded. Trump has said that Ukraine will never become a member of NATO, which is a rejection of the U.S. position since 2008 when George W. Bush first advocated it. He said that there will be no NATO security guarantees. This basically lays down central elements of what Russia already wants, and that has affected the negotiations, which, by the way, have been more about a ceasefire than a permanent peace settlement. A permanent deal is a long way away.
But what do you make of everything you just laid out there still hasn't resulted in a ceasefire? Why do you think that is?
Now, before he answers that, I want to say this. Maybe the lopsided approach that Trump has had, the only zigging and not zagging, is geared as much to give Putin as every incentive to come to that table because he just wants to get this over with. And this is what Bolton's about to say.
Because that amounts to surrender for Ukraine. These are the Russian positions that then give them the basis after they regroup and rebuild their army for the third invasion of Ukraine, to finish what Putin and the Kremlin began back in 2005, announcing it publicly to the world that they were about recreating the Russian Empire. And that includes, critically, getting control of Ukraine. This Trump approach to Russia, I think, is a critical mistake for the United States. This will be one of the biggest reversals of policy in history. It will have ramifications for American national security all over the world. And as Trump says, he doesn't really care about it. He just wants to do it to get the war behind him. That's all he really cares about.
Yeah, he wants to get the war behind him. Like, that's the primary motivation. I think there's something to that. I think that does seem to register with why you would be doing some things the way you're doing things. Okay, I saw this morning. I know some of you are going to be going nuts about this. Okay, Donald Trump merchandise store releases Trump 2028 hats. Okay, life is hard enough. Don't waste your time worrying about this. This is either a marketing ploy just to bilk people to sell a $50 hat. $50 for the hat? Really? To sell people a $50 hat. There are some people in MAGA land that'll be like on the other side of this. Well, we wish we could have had Trump back again. Okay, sure. Okay, there are some people that wish they had Nixon back again or whatever. Okay, I got that. But you can't. He can't actually run again. And I know some of you will be saying, well, he's an authoritarian. He's just going to take over. You need 2/3 of the states in order to, a supermajority in Congress and a supermajority in the states in order to pass a constitutional amendment. Half the country does not want to see that. So there's not going to be a takeover or something. It is either a marketing ploy to sell hats to the faithful, or it's setting something up for, say, Don Jr. or his other son, Eric, if they have political ambitions. But you won't see Trump again in the next election. I'm just don't waste your time on things that don't really matter. Last little bit, my friends, I'll leave you with this image of a AFU soldier on the front lines. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.